Hi, welcome to MaroonWarlock Gaming. I'm the MaroonWarlock. Today we're going to be doing some Black-Haired Reanimator for the Legacy Challenge today, given that it goes, which I think it will. Um, you've probably seen this deck before. I've run, or similar from what I've done. I've run this before. It's been featured. One of my more favorite decks to play in Legacy. I'm getting some practice in for the Philadelphia Open team constructed. I'm my team's Legacy player this time around. So we're going to be running this through the gauntlet of a challenge, try to get some reps in of getting used to the endurance that's involved, and trying to get myself into like a tournament mindset with this deck. I feel pretty good about it. I know it's not one of the best in the format right now, but I like the turn one potential to just win games because it's just not a fair deck. And I have this hunch I'm going to be seeing a lot of Eldrazi, which this deck has a mostly favorable matchup. Eldrazi really needs like the right setup really early in order to win. That I feel comfortable rolling the dice and running this. I also, because I have Eldrazi, don't like playing the mirror. The mirror for Eldrazi is just one of the dumbest things I've ever played. Uh, so we'll start with this. As you can see, we're running 13 lands, very, very small. I'll probably link the deck tech to when I ran this deck, just through a competitive league, in the description if you want to see the evolution of this deck, because it has changed a little bit, not much, but a little bit. It's mostly in the sideboard where the changes occurred, but we'll still go over each individual card in here while we have time. So we're running 3 basics, two swamps and a mountain, because I prefer to run a couple basics of each type that I really care about. I'm running a white splash in the sideboard. I don't think it's really worth running a plains, though, obviously. We're running 7 fetches. We actually have more fetches than fetchable targets. The 4 Bloodstained Mire are definitely in both lists, my paper and my online list. I'm running the deltas here because I have them in paper. I got 2 Marsh Flats and an Arid Mesa because I'm running a pair of Badlands and a Scrubland as my dual-colored mana sources. That should cover the lands. We have some mana acceleration in the form of 4 Lotus Petals, where you sack it to add a mana of any color to your mana pool. Helps get you that white if you need it, if the Scrubland's not available. Or play red, because sometimes having red's a little wonky too if I'm stuck with a swamp. We're also running a Chrome Mox, which effectively can act as a... In most cases, it's going to be a Mox Jet or a Mox Pearl. The white one I think is Pearl, but... Or Diamond. No, Diamond's not it, I don't think. Anyway, not important. Usually I'm either exiling a redundant reanimation spell or redundant, say, Entomb or Thoughtseize, or I'm doing it on a Chancellor. But anyway, that's part of the mana acceleration. These cards help you with your turn 1 combos to try to win as early as possible, because that's what this deck wants to do. It wants to, if it doesn't win turn 1, effectively lock your opponent out and just dominate and set up so you can lock them out turn 2. I've had some games recently where it's gone longer and it's won or it's lost. I played in some Miracles a few times in the past week while practicing this deck and been winning a decent amount. I feel like that should be a bad matchup though, because Miracles. Anyway, we got a quad of Dark Ritual, because Dark Ritual is Dark Ritual, which is just an amazing card. And again, it helps out our turn 1 wins. My click wheel is broken, so please review to look at the preview pane on our left side over here for the zoomed in view. We're also running for reanimation, enabling getting stuff into our graveyards. We got a play 7 Tombs to dig for what creature card you want to grab. Usually it's Grizzlebrand or Iona or Elish, depending on what I know I'm playing. But 9 times out of 10, or 8 times out of 10, it's Grizzle, 1 is Iona, and then like half it's like a Elish Norn. Anyway, so you'll grab that. We also have Faithless Lootings, which are great because you draw 2 cards, can dig you to other pieces you'll need, and then you pitch 2, usually creatures. We got some Collective Brutalities, which, if you're not escalating with Brutality, you probably didn't Brutality right, because the Pseudo Duress mode should always get picked along with the Life Siphon. Unless you're playing against a weenie deck that's running like Stoneforge Mystic and all that stuff, where you're going to want to do the -2/-2 on someone. But it helps pave the way for your comboing, because you don't want to accidentally get Force of Willed when you go to combo, because that'll just set you back a lot. Or play your guy and then get Swords of Plowshare. You try to avoid that. We're running 4 Thoughtseize. It doubles as both a disruptive spell for your opponent to try to grab that Force of Will that you're afraid of, or that Rest in Peace, or that insert Graveyard Hate or counter spell. It also allows you to, in dire straits, discard a creature from your hand that you can later reanimate. I've done that a few times. It's kind of like, I know some lists run Unmask over the Collective Brutalities, for example. I think with the current meta, Collective Brutality is better. And I love Unmask. I just can't fit in the deck. But I love the versatility Thoughtseize gives us more. Just because, yeah, you have to pay mana, but you don't have to X for 1 yourself. Or, because if I have to unmask targeting myself, effectively using 3 cards right off the bat, which isn't advisable, in my mind at least. Although this deck can win off of 3 cards in hand, or a 4-card hand, provided on how you draw. From there, we'll move on to the actual reanimation spells. So we got 12 reanimation spells for, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we actually have an extra reanimation spell than we would need to reanimate our entire list of targets. We got 4 Reanimates, which is effectively the namesake of the deck. Very good card, obviously. 1 mana to bring Grizzlebrand back from the dead for 8 life. Easily a trade most people are more than happy to make. We also got a play set of Animate Deads. This one's a little bit susceptible to Enchantment Hate if I know my opponent's running a lot of Enchantment Hate for whatever reason. I might side the Animate Deads out for just other cards in my sideboard that I'd rather run. But enchant a creature in a graveyard, Animate Dead ETBs, the enchanted creature in the graveyard gets reanimated, wall of text. The important part is the creature that you choose comes back with this attached, with a -1/-0 attached. So your Grizzlebrand will be a 6/7, for example. And then if they get rid of Animate Dead, the creature goes back to the yard. A lot more text than what was needed, but whatever, I digress. Gets the point across. And lastly, we got my favorite of the reanimation spells, Exhume, except for the parts where my opponent has a creature in their graveyard themselves. Be careful of that. I actually, at GP Louisville last year, I sided in Fairy Macabre's Eldrazi against Reanimator and did that. They went to Exhume. I used Fairy Macabre to get rid of their only options and then reanimated my Fairy Macabre. It was the reason I won the match. So if you know your opponent's siding in Fairy Macabres, or if we see it, say, Game 2, you got to be very careful with how you Exhume. Because that Fairy Macabre's going to wreck your shit, more or less. Or you got to make sure you have a flying target that will reanimate to try to deal with that. Now moving on to the fun part. What can I bring back to life? Obviously, you're running 3 big Grizz in the main. I know some lists run 4. I prefer the 3 because he's redundant at 4 in my mind, at least. And it's sort of like if I ran the 4th, kind of like if I ran a 4th Brutality, I'd probably be cutting a land over here. 13 already feels light. I don't want to go that low. obviously, he's your main target because drawing 7 cards in Legacy, fun fact, is very powerful, if that wasn't obvious already. Um, he can usually combo up to lock you out, either with Tidespout Tyrant, where you just start bouncing permanents every time you cast things, which, as you can tell with our mana curve here, really not difficult to cast things to trigger them. Or Sire of Insanity. This is my favorite go-to when I'm playing, because I try to Grizzlebrand into Sire, unless I can turn 1 Sire right off the bat really easily. Because once you have Sire Insanity out, if it's turn 1, they're done. Because if you're on the play and it's turn 1, they don't get their land plays, they don't get to play spells. They are in permanent top deck mode, and they need to hit lands first. And if they don't hit lands to start, then it's over. Usually, if you get Sire out on turn 1 on the play, they'll just auto-scoop because they don't have a way to beat you. And yeah, obviously, at the beginning of each end step, each player discards his or her hand. That works on both sides. And what's nice is if you have Grizzlebrand already out, it lets you can just draw your 7, and you're probably using up most of that 7 anyway, so whoop-de-doo. Only issue with him is that he only has 4 toughness, so he's very easy to get rid of at times. But there are times where if you can't reanimate a target, you can actually hardcast a Sire of Insanity if you play your hand correctly on turn 1. You can generate up to 6 mana turn 1 with the right hand. It's actually really funny because it's a weird thing to have to hardcast Sire, but I think he's the only card. I think I've hardcast a Chancellor once, but that one required 3 Lotus Petals or 2 Petals and a Chrome Mox or something silly. So it's obviously not ideal. I don't think it's actually realistically possible to hardcast Grizz. Or definitely not Tidespout. Tidespout, you need 3 Lotus Petals. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts. Iona's basically, you're never casting or hardcasted. But Sire is an option to hardcast. If you're in dire straits, one of these guys in the 7 slot can, but it's highly unlikely. Moving to our 7th slot, because we're at the 7 mana here. We got 4 Chancellor of the Annex. This is mostly to kind of protect you on turn 1 against counter spells. You reveal it. So if I have turn 1, I have like Grizzlebrand, Chancellor, and then the ways that Grizzlebrand's is a field on turn 1. When you have it in your opening hand, you can reveal Chancellor of the Annex. So that way, if they do try to force, it gets countered because its ability there you may reveal from your opening hand whenever they cast their first spell of the game. Counter that spell unless that player plays 1. And then it's good to side in against things like Storm and Miracles and stuff like that because it makes everything they try to cast cost 1 more. Although I usually side it out. It's 50-50 if I keep it in Miracles because of how, we'll say, interesting it is. Because if they hit the right set of lands, it doesn't really matter. They're not getting countered. I am now running an Elesh Norn main. This is one of the big changes I made. Was I used to run 2 Sire of Insanities. I decided I like Elesh Norn in the main, mostly because it gives me a free board wipe to deal with some of the weenie decks going around like Maverick and any of the Stoneblade decks. It just kind of kills most of the stuff I'm worried about. Obviously, I don't do this if I know they're going to have a Swords of Plowshares ready to go. But it's a good way to have like a backup ace in the hole. Say it goes later than the 2 turns. I can just pull that out, wipe the board, reset. Even if they do Swords it. Next, we have our Tidespout Tyrant. I already kind of went over this one when I was explaining the combos of Grizzlebrand, but obviously, anytime you cast a spell, you return permanents to their hands. It's even funny when you have Sire out as well, although at that point it's overkill to begin with. At that point, you're able to just kind of say, bounce to your hand, now you discard. Have fun. Lastly, my favorite card in the deck to be on, or one of my favorite cards to reanimate too, is Iona. There are a lot of games where I'm literally just pitching Iona and reanimating her, and naming whatever color is most relevant and locking my opponent out of the game. If you know what color your opponent's playing, like if I'm playing against Storm and I reanimate Iona, I'm probably naming black because it shuts off Ad Nauseam, shuts off their Dark Rits, shuts off Infernal, shuts off their main win con, which is Tendrils. Almost forgot what it was called. So that's why that's there. We're going to move on to the sideboard now because that's the fun part. As you can see, we're running the one Grizzle as reanimation target. Just in case there's some matchups where we want the extra Grizzle brand, we have it. Blazing Archon for our creature-based matchups. Basically, it's a 5/6 flyer. Creatures can't attack you. Very relevant. They flood the board, and they find a way to deal with Elesh Norn. Or you don't want their creatures dying, so you just make it so they can't attack you. You kind of just turtle. We got an archetype of Endurance. This helps deal with Karakas, and decks that run a lot of removal will probably side this in for, because you can just spawn an archetype, and then all your shit has hexproof. They can't deal with it. Eidolon of Rhetoric. This is one of the only hard-castable creatures in the 75 that's realistic. I bring this in to deal with Storm, because they can't cast stuff with Storm, and it's a bit difficult for them to deal with. And Storm's one of the matchups where it could go either way because of how fast Storm combos off, that I wanted to have a couple aces in the hole to deal with that. We also, this is another recent addition, we have Grave Titan, which I was testing with it yesterday. My god, the card is amazing. I bring it in against lands, decks that want to bounce things like Karakas, or want to deal with stuff, because if you get rid of the Grave Titan, you still have the zombies that spawns on ETB and or attacks. We're running a Periphery Macabre for the mirror, and that was more of a personal choice. I don't want to be left with my pants down if I'm playing against a mirror match. We got a pair of Duresses that come in against a lot of the decks that don't run too many creatures, because I want to be able to pick apart their hand a bit more and be a bit more aggressive with it. Running a pair of Stronghold Gambits because lands is a thing. And other, again, decks that don't run creatures but run Graveyard Hate, it gives me an option to be like, Stronghold Gambit, here we go, I got my best creature from my entire hand onto the field. Screw your Rest in Peace or your Leyline of the Void or whatever, what have you. Pithing Needle, because I live and die by this fucking card. Pardon my French, but I love Pithing Needle. If I can fit in my sideboard, I try to. It's a good way of just saying 1 mana, turn off their most valuable card. Also has a mana ability, cough, Pithing Needle, Heritage Druid does not work. I have done that before, it's a bad time. But turning off Karakas, trying to turn off things like Dark Depths, or rather Thespian Stage for Dark Depths and lands. Stoneforge Mystic, Jite, what have you. Lots of relevant targets for this card, that it's worth running a one of in the sideboard. And last but not least, we got our playset of Wear and Tears. Let me expand that for those that are not familiar with Wear and Tear. We are mostly using it for this version. The Tear half. Destroy target enchantment, a.k.a. Rest in Peace. Destroy target Rest in Peace. Destroy target Leyline of the Void. Destroy target Leyline of Sanctity if we really need to. Destroy target enchantment in general. If I'm running against Enchantress, I actually did that the other day. I sided in all 3. It gave me some outs, helped me deal with their something or other. Can't think of the card. Makes enchantments that are not auras, creatures. Words are hard. Terror is good if we run into an affinity type deck, or a deck that's using a lot of artifacts, or they're running something like Grafdigger's Cage instead of Rest in Peace. So excuse me. That's our, this is our list. This is our 75. This is probably what I'm running. Oh yeah, that actually works out. I can put up Stronghold. There's a lot of text there, so you guys can read it while I finish this up. This is our 75 that we're most likely going balls to the wall in this challenge, along with the Open at the end of this month. Hopefully you'll join me for this challenge today, and I hope you enjoy as well. As usual, I'm the Maroon Warlock on Maroon Warlock Gaming, and deuces.